Hi, good afternoon to you. I wanted to give you a brief update on some things to do for for the class. I wanted to also mention to you if you happen to have the handbook from College Writing, which is called the Brief Penguin Handbook. It's actually a pretty good handbook to refer to for this class because it does have a variety of information as far as how to use the colon, the semicolon, how to introduce quotes, what a block quote is, and information of that nature. So if you still have it, I would keep it around on your desktop and refer to it. If you don't have a handbook, like just a regular standard handbook, you can always go to owl.english.purdue.edu. So it's the online writing lab at Purdue University, and so it's one that I would say that you should look at or refer to. Now, with the handbook for this class, the writing research papers by Lester and Lester, I can tell you how long that handbook has been around. I went to college in 1977, so and I just looked at the cost of my textbooks for my entire first semester, and it was $50. So textbooks have gone up. Even the handbook itself these days is much, much more expensive, but it's a good one. So keep the Lester and Lester writing research papers handbook around. And I do assign chapters in that book to refer to, and so I would encourage you to look at it. I am at the college now, and I don't have my book here with me. I'll refer to it later in the semester, but I just wanted to mention to you. If you ever work in a number of organizations, like if you ever become a journalist, they have what's called the Associated Press Style Book. This one was from 2009, but there's more recent ones. My son Mike is a journalist, and they refer to it. But how to refer to the Queen of England, or if you refer to a cardinal in the Catholic Church, do you call him His Eminence or whatever? My point to you is, though, that many companies or many organizations will have style guidelines to follow. If you ever go and Google, type in NASA style guidelines, and they have style guidelines for people to follow. So, space capsule, they would have that spelled a certain way. I was in the Navy for 4 years, and we had to use a naval correspondence manual. And so, for example, there was a difference between the word on board as one word and on board as two words. On board as one word meant that you were on board a ship. So the captain of the Kitty Hawk is on board, okay? But if you have on board as two words, that meant that you agreed with something. So are you on board with this idea? And so there's a very, very big difference, between the two. And then, of course, in certain organizations, you'll use certain acronyms to refer to certain things. For example, when I was in the Navy, if you ever wrote OBE, which means overtaken by events, it means the situation was so messed up it wasn't going to get any better, and you would actually be better starting over again. But we also had to use the various different commands like ComNav, Surf, Pack, and so you had to follow those. So I'm just saying, beyond advanced composition, when you're writing professionally, you will have to follow certain guidelines or a certain style, and even certain companies will have templates for you, to follow. Because I had a student who's a field service technician slash manager for Caterpillar, and he goes to these big strip mines in West Virginia, and he always tells us, told me that, if a bulldozer blade fails, you have to write a report, and has to follow, this was the model of the dozer, this is how old it was, if it was under warranty or not, this is how many hours it had on the machine and all that. So you had to follow these very specific guidelines, and so the engineering department had to look at it, the legal, the customer service, and so on. But I mean, it had to be done. Now let me go back to advanced composition, and I wanted to refer to this class a little bit as far as work we're going to be doing in the next few weeks. And I wanted to talk somewhat about your research paper. Big thing that I'm going to focus on this week is your proposal, okay? Spend some time referring to your proposal or developing your proposal, and I would suggest that I had a student in class before, and she had a really, really good idea that I sometimes even use. She would have a big post-it note board by her desk at home, and then she had those, larger size, post-it notes, maybe of this size or even a bit bigger. And then she would put these post-it notes, and she would put her ideas for her paper, and she would jot them down. And then when she was typing, she would look at it, or when she was getting organized, but it was a way for her to be organized and really think about what it is that she was doing. I thought, boy, that's a really, really, good idea. So the other suggestion that I have is, especially when you're writing your proposal, I would actually verbally explain it to some other people to say, you know what, I'm taking an advanced composition course this summer, and I need to write a research paper, and this is what I'm getting into. Here are my ideas. I'd like to share them to you. So you can read them, or you can just verbalize them. But sometimes in talking to people, they'll say, you know what, I don't quite understand that. Could you explain it to me further? And that's something, you should do. So, in college writing or Comp 1, whatever you took, you do brainstorming, and sometimes I just make a list of ideas to brainstorm. And then, of course, sometimes I'll make a cluster. I'll have the main idea, and then I'll kind of branch off. I'll put that into 3 or 4 sub-ideas, like some of you are doing for some of your papers, which I think is a really, really good idea. And then you can branch off from those for 3 or 4 more other ideas. So, that's a consideration that you can do for the for the brainstorming and getting your ideas together. With your proposal, if you aren't quite on track or if you're a little bit too broad, I'm going to have you narrow it down. And don't say, oh man, he's being too picky about this. The biggest thing that I can't express to you enough in this class is it helps for you to have a clear direction on the front end, and so then you get clearer as you move more into the paper. The other thing that I am going to tell you, if you find from writing your, after you do your proposal and then you do your outline and your preliminary bibliography and so on, when you actually start to write the paper, if you find, you know what, I need to go in a slightly different direction here, well, you're certainly allowed to. A proposal is a starting point, but, as you go further into the paper, maybe you're finding there isn't just quite enough research. There was a student in this class last summer that did cluster headaches. And he realized, you know what, cluster headaches and migraine headaches actually are so interrelated that I might have to expand my focus a little bit. And so therefore he had to do that. So, you can always do that. But the other thing that I would tell you is after you write your proposal, start looking for sources. And, most people will say, okay, I'm going to use the web. But also, Kathleen Keith, who was a reference librarian here at WCCC, she used to tell me this all the time. She said, you know what, one place that a lot of people don't even consider starting, which is a good place to start, is Encyclopedia Britannica, which is available through our website. And I'll tell you why that's a good place to start. It has encyclopedia articles, which are well researched, by the way. It also has websites. It has periodicals, which are magazines, newspapers, and journals. It also has visuals. It has ebooks. So it's a fantastic place to start because it'll lead you to other sources. And of course, I'm a big fan of EBSCOhost, but recently, just this summer, they've added a more advanced feature to EBSCOhost, which gives you access to more of our databases. If you check out as well, there's one in there called Credo Reference, which I really like. And when you go into Credo Reference, you can search for something. So it's like if you were searching for Chinese medicine or something. And then you can also do like a visual search, and it'll show you, like, it'll branch off. So it'll show Chinese medicine, acupuncture, acupressure, massage, a lot of others. I can't think of all the other forms of herbs they use for Chinese medicine, but what I'm just showing is it'll branch off into other directions. And so that Credo Reference is a great place to look. And of course, we have ebooks. Don't use Wikipedia, though. Wikipedia is not a reliable source, in my opinion, and anyone can contribute to it. So, like I said, Encyclopedia Britannica, EBSCOhost. If you're doing a legal-related matter, LexisNexis is a good one, or medical. Legal and medical are actually quite good under LexisNexis. If you do search in Google, you're going to find that it's not going to give you the best sources, but the ones that are most popular, those are not always the most reliable. So you're going to have to evaluate them. Whatever you do, there is a section in our handbook that talks about evaluating websites, which is really, really important these days. Social media, how accurate is the information, periodicals and so on. And you can always consider using interviews. You can do interviews. You can do a survey if you want. And, you can design something like that. You could do a brief focus group. You could always do an observation. For those of you that are going on, like if you're into psychology or whatnot, you may have to do a longer project and you may have to do observations. I've had students that have gone to Western Psych at UPMC, have done observations, or Torrance State Hospital, which is part of our state hospital system. So anyhow, those are options. Don't limit yourself. The biggest thing that I will tell you is when I taught advanced composition earlier in my career here, I've actually been here since 1992, but since 1990 part-time. And at that time, we had to use the New York Times Index, the Reader's Guide to Periodicals, and those were books that you had to actually look through and find information. And then you had to use microfilm or microfiche, which were these pieces of film-looking material that you would put in to a reader, and then you'd have to print them out. And it took a long time to read them and find information. It would take a couple weeks to find good sources. Today, it's almost like you have too much information, and so you have to evaluate it and see what the information that suits your purposes the best. So that's what I would tell you. So don't just focus narrowly on web sources. Try to expand your focus a little bit. And then I said, if you can do some interviews, that is extremely advantageous. Because like somebody in our class is their sister is a certified speech therapist, they would be able to give a good interview. But some people have parents who are registered nurses or nutritionists, or some people, family members have irritable bowel syndrome, or a number of people in the family have had skin cancer, melanoma. So don't just focus really, really narrowly. You can. There's a range of possibilities as far as that goes. Later on in this class, we're going to talk a little bit about writing your research paper. But the biggest thing that I really like to see, I teach technical communication a lot, and so I like to see that also in advanced composition. I like to see at the very beginning of your paper like a listing of these are the key topics that I'm going to be covering. And then in the body, of course, you can use those headings. And if you want to, you can have them broken down into subheadings. So like if you were going to do skin cancer, melanoma, and prevention, so you could do clothing, you could do sunscreen, you could have 3 or 4 areas that you could focus on. So you have, the subheadings, and then before you go to the next section, you can have what's called a rehash review type of paragraph that reviews what you covered in that section, connects back to your thesis statement, and then moves you on to the next section. So that's something that's very, very helpful to do. I also want you to practice using transition words in your writing. Even when we do the one called I Want a Wife, I want you to practice using them. So you can use first, second, third, next, finally. You can use however, nevertheless, nonetheless. There's a number of different transition words that you can use, and those really, really help in writing. Also, too, when you write, I want you to practice using different verbs to introduce your quotes. You can always use stated, observed, noted, and so on. But, you don't have to use the same ones all the time. And then, of course, you can always introduce a quote at the very beginning. Dr. Cyril Wecht, forensic pathologist from Allegheny County, stated, quote, JFK may have been shot by more than one individual. So, you have it at the beginning. You can also have the quote, the person stating in the middle, and you can end it. Or, of course, you can have the quote, and then you can have the person stating it at the end. So you can vary it a little bit. What I would also tell you to do when you write your paper itself, there's nothing that says you can't use visuals or charts or graphics. I've had students in this class as well that will use that we use pictures, because I had a student that had skin cancer, female student. She had it on the back of her legs, I believe, but she actually showed what it looked like, and she showed, she had pictures from her dermatologist. And so, of course, like I said, you can use graphs or charts, like from the Center for Disease Control or a place like that. So, that's an option. I've had people that use videos, or if you want to use a YouTube video, that's fine. But papers that are more formatted, papers that are more engaging, that have some visuals, they will pull you in and they will keep you interested. And keep in mind, too, and this is one other point that I really wanted to say, is when you write for this particular class, what you can also think of is, hey, I might use this paper for an anatomy and physiology class, or psychology, or abnormal psychology, or sociology, or whatnot. But it's a good idea to say, I'm going to start with this topic, and then I'm going to use it for a variety of other purposes. So always, consider that, because that is definitely, to your advantage. So those are just some thoughts that I had. But, I always think of research writing. There's a lot of practical applications to it. As you look through the syllabus with the readings, just even if you look at those basically, especially with our textbook, but with a handbook, if you're watching TV at night or something, you can look through the chapters and get an idea as far as what's in them. So for, this week, you have to do May 28th, you have to post your proposal for your research paper by the 28th, and you have to respond to at least what another person said by the 30th. By Friday, May 6th, you have to do the one on I Want a Wife, and that's explained pretty much on there. And then for Friday, June 13th, you have to submit a preliminary bibliography. A preliminary bibliography is simply a listing of sources you are considering using for your research paper. I'd like to see about 18 to 20 of them. You can certainly use more than that. I definitely don't want to see 10, but I just want you to format those. And what you can do is you can use easybib.com. Microsoft Word has, in the references part of that, there's a section in there as far as in using, using Word to create bibliographic citations. If you have the newer version of Word, like 2010 or 2013, it'll have the the information, the most up-to-date versions. Because I'm looking at it now, and if you click on references, it'll say MLA, and it'll give you the 6th edition, which is the most recent one. And so it'll create your citations for you. So it'll say, like, you can click on Insert Citation, and you can click Add New Source, and then it'll ask you, is this a book? Is this a periodical? Is this a report? Is this an interview? Whatever it is. And so you fill in the information, and it creates your citations for you. So just wanted to suggest that, to you as well. And then for the 13th, there's a quiz that's due as well. Whatever you do, though, try not to do it yourself. I would strongly encourage you to pick another person in the class and try to do it with them, because believe me, it'll be to your advantage. It'll take you too long to do it by yourself. We do two quizzes in this class, and if you do them like that, that's okay. If you really wanted to, I would even allow up to 3 people. Keep in mind, though, I don't care how you split it up. I don't care if one person does 75% and the other people do 25%. If you submit them all to your names, you're all going to get the same score. With the quizzes, you can't revise those, so I just wanted to tell you that. So that's it for today. Once I get to about 20 minutes, sometimes these videos no longer work. So if you have any questions, please be in touch. Thanks.